Jerry Lawson. This is my car. It's a 1950 MG YT. T stands for Tourer. Previous to this, they had an MG YA and a YB, which were the four-door saloon versions of the car. They made 877 of these vehicles, mainly all for export. Only 4 were sold into the UK. I've only had this car 4 weeks, and I bought it from Holland. The previous owner sadly died, not in the car I might add, and his widow wanted to go to somebody who would use it and enjoy it, so I went across on the boat and fetched it, and we've been using it and enjoying it for the past 4 weeks. It's a nice thing for us. Well, the car itself, as I say, is 1950. Very rare in this country. In fact, there are 17 known of in the UK, of which only 7 are actually on the road being driven almost daily, as it were. The technical aspects of the car is that it's the same engine and running gear and chassis as the previously produced MG TD and TF. The rear half of the body is basically a Morris 8E, which was modified by the MG car group at Abingdon, and it's one of the last traditionally shaped cars with an upright slatted grille, separate chrome headlamps, and the traditional sort of driving style. It shares its engine and gearbox also with a lot of other cars. Wolseley, Wiley. It's what we call an X-Pag engine, and it's 1250. It's not expensive to run. Most parts are available for it still. It returns 25, 28 to the gallon on the run, and we find it very comfortable. 70 miles an hour is not realistic, but 55, 60 miles an hour is quite comfortable with the car. It's enjoyable to drive. I've always had MG cars. I mean, I'm 42 at the moment, and my first car was bought when I was 17. I've got 3 other MGs at the moment. We just like MGs, the way they drive, the way they're built. There's a tremendous following for them, including a very active owners club and car club with a full race series. We intend to go across to Ireland with the MG club very shortly. In this, I hope. And it's one of those things, we've grown up with it. We love them. It's very good. The previous owner of the car had owned the car 14 or 15 years, and 8 years ago he spent a small fortune on it, having it restored professionally to the tune of something like £15,000 or the equivalent in Dutch guilders. Every last nut and bolt was looked at and replaced. The engine, gearbox, everything was done. He even managed to find an original set of carpet covers, seats, etc., and put a lot of money into the car, time and effort. At the moment there's a few minor paint blemishes, but apart from that she's very good mechanically. There's no rust or rot in the bodywork, and I intend to do the paintwork eventually, as and when I get time and effort, get around to doing it. But I'll enjoy doing it, and it'll be my achievement. The dashboard of the car is reminiscent to very many pre-war cars, in that it has twin hump scuttles as the pre-war race cars would have. We have the tachometer in front of the passenger seat on the left hand side there. The main dashboard considers petrol gauge, temperature gauge, fuel gauge, and the main speedometer is in front of the driver, obviously. On this car it's in kilometres because the car was supplied onto the continent. The starting button is on the right hand side of the centre dashboard and is of pull. It's a pull type effect. The previous owner has put a separate temperature gauge underneath the dashboard on this car, which is quite realistic. The car actually features an onboard optional extra in form of a heater, so the car actually has a heater to be used. Very mechanical, made out of plywood box with a fan in it and an element, and it works okay, but no great shakes. The car itself is manufactured in 1950. It is of course a much older design of vehicle, probably from pre-war days. The first Y types were built in 1946 and there were prototypes before that. This came along in 1950 It's 1950s type motoring. As such, we don't go on motorways. We try not to go on motorways and busy roads. We get bullied by cars, lorries, coaches, that sort of thing. We tend to stick to the local lanes, have a nice little run around. 50 miles an hour is more than we really want to do. It's just the joy of having something that's handmade, handcrafted in the UK, very rare. It's enjoyable to drive. Of course, there's no roof, although we have the roof in the back and the side screens to put on if it does ever rain. Living in South Wales, we get quite used to that, up and down and all that. It's just a very much enjoyable car to drive.
This particular car's got an A35, it's the 950cc engine, producing 34 brake horsepower. The later A35s were 1098, and the very late vans were 850. First of the A-series engines were the A30 with an 803cc engine. This particular car is a two-door. I bought the A35, reason being my father's had one since I was a kid, and I was brought home from hospital when I was born in one, and my brother and sister were. We've always had one in the family, and I just decided to have one myself. I've had 9 now at the moment. I've got another one besides this. I just love them. Very unusual, bit different. Cheap to run and insure. It's ideal. Bit different to drive in modern traffic. Bit different from the 50s. We've got drum brakes all around on this particular car, so you need to stop a fair distance away from each other. Slightly harder clutch, but they're very easy to drive in all honesty. With radial tyres and disc brakes on, they're much more suited for everyday transport. When I bought this particular car, only recently I purchased it. There was one family owner from new. I've replaced 2 outer sills, a bit of welding on the side. I've rebuilt the engine. Cosmetically, I've done a bit of spray work on it. It's 48,000 from new when I bought it. I've just returned back from Great Yarmouth doing 700-mile round trip with no problems at all, and goes very well. 50 to the gallon, so very good car. Very economic car. We get 50 to the gallon, Group 1 insurance, no taxes over 25 years old. Very economical. The owners club are very excellent with these particular cars. We've got a 1,500 people membership worldwide, ranging from New Zealand, Sweden, Denmark, Holland. Very nice people, very, very good. My next trip with my other car, I'm taking to Holland, leaving at 7 o'clock in the morning from Swindon, staying overnight in Harwich, and then from Harwich to Hooker Holland, and there's about 50 other A30-35s going to this trip. It's 20 years of the Dutch group. It should be quite a good weekend. Plenty of socialising, plenty of cars talking, and parts to be bought, and a few more beers.
Hi, my name's Alex. This is an A35, 1959 four-door A35. I've owned it since I was 13. When I was 13, I actually bought it for £10. I've done it up straight from then. I bought it off the ex-Lord Mayor of Cardiff. They had it under a tent for about 20 years. I've totally rebuilt it. I've added the odd extras, like the overriders on the fronts. Had to replace all the wing and stuff on the side, the doors. The four doors a bit tighter with the people in the back. If you've got big people, in the back. It does get a bit tight. It's got a 948 engine. It does the thing, does the job. The main thing that attracts me to this car is this main character. It's a nice little car. It's really what I want. It doesn't go any fast speeds or anything like that. Nice plot around the town. I just really enjoy it. Really good character to it. Everyone enjoys it. Driving in 2001 is a bit difficult. You've got the modern cars with their brakes and stuff. With this, it hasn't got any of the like modern disc brakes and stuff. So I've got to be quite careful. Coming up to roundabouts, traffic lights, you've got to be really careful. Anything like that. With people, you do get the odd occasion with people shouting at me, give me a bit of abuse in town, being a bit too slow. I just basically ignore it and carry on. I just enjoy it. I get a lot of people looking at me. In college they love it. Okay, you get the odd person, but I don't really mind. People really enjoy it. I haven't actually got a modern car. This is actually my main mode of transport. Reason being is, well, if I have any problems with it, I can just sort it straight away, or call out my dad. I get everything done with it. I really want to keep it for as long as I can. It's really as long as I can keep it running, I'll keep it. There is a couple of odd jobs which I need doing. Gearbox has to be redone and a new paint job. That's about it, really. This particular model is actually a bog standard model. It came with no actual optional extras. It's just a heater. I've included the wing mirrors and the overriders, which are actually on the car, and the spotlights. That at the time you could actually pay for those extras. I just really enjoy driving it because it's just really easy to drive for myself. I've got into the routine of driving it. I also like when I drive through town, I get a lot of people looking at me. Attention, really, I get a lot of it. And I can basically, if it breaks down, I can do everything.
My name is John Evans, and this is my 1954 Austin A40 Somerset. I also have a 1953 Austin Somerset, which is, to all intents and purposes, exactly the same. That car we've owned for over 40 years. My father bought the car when I was a toddler back in the late 1950s, and it's been with us ever since. This particular Austin here, I've owned for about 12 months. It's the same colour. They're both Balmoral blue. Balmoral blue was a colour introduced by Austin in 1953. It was one of about 5 or 6 colours with royal connotations, which was introduced because of the coronation of Queen Elizabeth, the current Queen. My original Austin Somerset, registration NOX 902, as I say, was bought by my father back in the 1950s when I was a youngster. It has served us well all throughout my younger years, and in fact when I began to drive, I learned to drive on the same car. I used it when I was in college, when I was in Plymouth. I used it actually up until the day I got married in the early 80s. It then took a secondary role, I suppose, because other cars, more modern cars, came along, but still it outlasted every one of them. So as I say, it's been with us for over 40 years. Now obviously, as you can see, it's not looking at its best, because about a year ago I decided to take it off the road and give it a bit of an overhaul. When we started to remove things like the front wings, there were 1 or 2 holes at the bottom, but it was very difficult to work out how the original metal had been folded when it was made in the factory. So I remembered that approximately 15 years ago I'd seen this Austin here in a local show, and I made a note of the gentleman's name. He was a member of the Austin County's Car Club. So I rang him up, and yes, he still had it. This was approximately a year ago. He hadn't used it for 8 or 9 years, and I managed to persuade him to sell it. Now we could use that car then as a template, because this one has never been welded. It's original. It's only done 40,000 miles, and was a perfect template to do my car. My heart remains with the other one, but this is very nice, particularly as they're both exactly the same colour interior. One has done 200,000 plus miles, one has done 40 odd. The Austin A40 Somerset was the successor to the very famous and successful Austin A40 Devon. This was Austin's first post-war new car, and I think was the best-selling car in Europe and Britain for all the time it was built. The Somerset was a rebodied Devon. They both use a separate chassis, and it was actually the last of the Austin models to feature a separate chassis. It was styled along the similar lines to the larger Austin A70 Hereford. They both used the same back wings, the same doors, but the difference was that the Hereford was wider and the Hereford used larger wings. Mechanically, it uses a 1200 overhead valve engine, which was actually the predecessor of the B series Austin engine, which powered Austin Cambridges, MGBs, MGAs, but this was the actual predecessor of it. It looks pretty well identical. When my father used to use the original Austin, obviously it was doing 12,000 miles a year. When I took it over in the 1970s, it became my everyday car. As I remember going to college, I remember doing 23,000 miles in 1 year, which is quite a lot for a car which even then was 25, 26-year-old. Over the last 10 years, it hasn't gone very far at all, just come in and out of the garage with the odd little run. But about a year or two, I met up with some of the local Austin Counties Car Club members who are based in Cardiff, and it got my interest going again. So we go to a lot of shows, we go for runs, and since I bought this other Austin, it's enabled me, while the other one is being restored, to go further afield. So we try and use it certainly more, I wouldn't say it's a daily basis, but certainly every week, but mainly for pleasure. I've had lots of different so-called classic or collector's cars over the years, but the Austin has always remained with me where others have come and go. I think they're a good car, good quality. I like the lines of the car. I think they're very pleasing. If you notice these days, a lot of the modern cars are starting to get more rounded, similar to the Austins, whereas in the 60s or 70s they were very square and clear-cut. So it doesn't look out of place. The quality is there, and it's just very pleasant to go out on a quiet, nice summer's day and go for a little run along a country lane to the pub or whatever with a lot of friends who've got similar cars. So that's it.
The year 1958 saw a replacement for the well-tried Austin A35. This was the A40 Farina. Farina of Italy became the in-designer then for Austins and brought a new look to British vehicles. We'd been using a lot of American styling and people were getting a bit fed up with it, but this Italian line proved to be something different. Yes, it was certainly a very good looking car, and it came in two particular types. There was the Countryman with a different opening back, which I suppose was the forerunner of all the British hatchbacks that we're so happy to see on the roads today. Yes, this Farina styling certainly took the British motorist's heart, and it wasn't long before Austin was thinking in terms of spreading design further into their fleet. Prior to the arrival of the Farina styling, Austin had also upgraded their bigger cars, the Cambridge series. And here we've got a fine example of the A40 Cambridge that came into production about 1954. And it went on then to become the A50 and then the A55. And you've got a fine pair of the here on show, the 50 and the 55. Still very much the Austin styling, but a very popular car these were. The A40 and A50 only differed in engine size. And look at the back window of that, very similar to the old A30 and 35's window. But later on, of course, they started expanding things a little, here with the 55 and putting a little bit extra to trim thereon. An attractive car and a well-loved car these were too. They made the much bigger version with the 110. a car that was very popular with taxi firms, etc. Two-tone styling was very much in vogue during that period, and Austin brought out an attractive range of colours. Now, Farina styling again, the A55 series, and this was a very popular series, the A55 and 60 they eventually went on to, with engines of 1489cc and also 1622cc, four-cylinder engines. But great cars, and the cabbies love these too, and a lot of police forces use them as their city cars. The Farina styling was certainly in as far as Austin was concerned. But of course these badged cars also carried the names of MG, Morris, Woolsey and Riley. Badge engineering was the thing, as so many firms had now gone into the BMC net. But a great performer, and many of these cars went on to go do many high mileages. Such was it a good, reliable motor. The Zephyr Mark I was produced from 1951 to 1956. It had a six-cylinder engine, 2,262cc. Now we're going back a little bit in time now to the famous little Ford Prefect. The Ford Prefect was a name given to Ford's little 10 horsepower car before the war, a different style to this. But in 1953 to 1959, this little car came out with that well-known, well-tried 1172cc Ford side valve engine and the 3-speed gearbox. Simple little cars, very simple in their mechanical layout, but how reliable and tough they were. And there's a lot of people on the roads today who cut their teeth on a little Ford Pop or a little Ford Prefect. We have a little lineup here of, on the left is one of the earlier Ford Anglias that run from about 1948 to 1953. Then that's that particular green model there. They had the 933cc engine, little side valve engine, very simple in its construction, and the whole chassis was very simple in its construction because it had a couple of leaf springs, crosswave mounted, just to give you simple roll-on corner type suspension, but it was reliable, and these cars were built down to a price. Very popular, as the name states. No fancy electronics on there. I wonder if a car of this nature would sell now that had been cut down to the minimum. The windscreen wipers on these cars were run from the induction manifold, and if you put your foot too hard down, well then, you had no wipers. You had to lift them just to get a bit of action. Not really suitable for today's traffic. And that's the Prefect. And that was produced from 1938 right through to 1953. That had the 1172cc side valve that we speak of so often. Very, very famous engine. Still that same old simple suspension, common to what was known as the perpendicular Fords. Motoring in these old Fords was not a luxury, but it was available to a lot of the poorer people who could not afford one of the classic cars of those days, the big expensive built vehicles. And here we have a brilliant example of the simplicity and the engineering in the Ford, built by the Ford apprentices. It just about takes you right the way through, shows you the chassis, and the simple suspension. Drew a lot of interest at this.
On the 8th and 9th of September this year. Quite a good collection of cars, not as many as you got here at Rome, my God, but for those of you who like a road run and a noggin and natter, now there's an even bigger event coming off now in Somerset at Nunny Catch.
Back now to our little Poplars and Anglia styling. This was the style that followed on the from the upright Fords. This particular one's the Prefect again, which is a good follow-on from the earlier one. And here you've got coming down to more conventional styling now, sitting down on the road just that little bit better, but still very simple in construction, and the same old 1172cc engine with a 3-speed gearbox. No more chassis in these days, it was unitary construction. And this particular model was in construction from 1953 to I think it was 1959. And they sold an awful lot of them. Over 100,000.
Sporting motor lapped it up. Rallies and racing.
Another fine example here. Look as though it had a smack in the eye, doesn't it?
There's a new Mini out now, of which I know very little. I haven't even bothered to go and look for one now because it's sort of our triumph as they say, the open top for there. Nice car to work on too.
Looks like it's in its original state, this one. These weren't too bad in the rust stakes. Some of them rotted through, depends how they were treated, but
Pretty good on the front end.
properly cared for. A good sound little car.
They made the pop and the Prefect. Little 3-speed box. Sidewall engine. 11
Remember buying one for £60 for my son to start his driving career.
running into the ground with it. What a lovely little machine they were. That little engine in there, but when we used to see the big cars going through New York, on the films that is, it's never been out. Have you been to the States, sir? They've been on this car. I have to see you there. But they were such a reliable, comfortable little vehicle. And there's one that I always happy because they were very stylish for the day. And I remember hiring one on my page. I think it was for, it was for Luigi's wedding, I believe. They originally came out with the headlights, three lights and the wings. Now, they were very efficient headlights. We get a bit of trouble with water getting in sometimes too. Then Lucas designed this attachment that you see on the front, the CLB headlights, which made them a much better car to drive at night. But,
There's the Anglia we referred to. The life of the Anglia started in 1959. Produced first of all with a 997 engine, and later the Super one came out with the 1197cc engine. These popular little cars, well, certainly served their owners very well. Good performers, quick, economic, and they had a 4-speed gearbox, which was the first 4-speed gearbox that Fords had produced for a car in this country. And what a lovely gearbox it was. They got it right. First time. You can see the unmistakable rearward sloping back window they had, which was quite a talking point at the time they came out. And of course, Ford's produced a little overhead valve engine on this occasion, as opposed to the old 1172 side valve that they'd run for so many years. Yes, these were produced as saloons and vans and gave long and steady service. The second car I ever owned was a little Anglia similar to this in the typical Ford red and grey. And what a fine lineup we have here at Rawton.
Again, lovely interior. It's ever such a slightly revised version of the original one.
Now there are little prefects or Anglias there for police purposes. I know the Somerset police use loads of these as a section car or a sergeant's car. And what's more, this one's got the Somerset registration. There aren't many branches of motoring history or types that haven't found the name Ford useful on some occasion or another.
I'm Carl Piet, and this is my Austin FL1 1958. They didn't build a lot of them. Originally they were all taxis, but some of them were higher cars. That means they had 4 doors instead of 3. You know, it's a nice car. You know, I like it very much. I've wanted one since I saw one in 1966. You know, and I thought that'd be a nice car because although it looks very old-fashioned, it isn't that old-fashioned. So it's still easy to get parts for, like, you know. And yet it gives the space that you want in a car, you know, that I want in a car, like. You know, if I didn't have this, I would have to have a big van, like, you know. But, well, originally it was, the first owner of it was the Arctic Whaling Company in London. And then after that it was bought by someone in Cavan Coit. And they had it for a while, and then somebody in Troydru, a cousin of them in Troydru, bought it. And they had it outside Merthyr Station as a taxi. And when they finished with it as a taxi in 1975, I bought it off them, you know, a few months after they finished with it, like. £10 it cost me, like, you know. And, well, of course it wasn't perfect, like, but, you know, I'd done a few things over the years, like, you know, first kingpins, brakes. Then I got it through the MOT, and then the body was a bit gone, like, you know, so I built up the inner wings, you know, rebuilt parts of the body as I went along, like, you know. Not, and you know, I don't want it perfect, I just want to get it on the road and keep it on the road, like, you know, that is the main thing for me, like. So, it's not too difficult to get tires, like, you know, the same as Jeep tires, you know, they'll fit, or they can be made to fit, like, you know. And, you know, I like driving it, you know, I like owning it. You know, I like the room you got inside, you know. You can put a lot of people in, or you can carry wardrobes and fridges, piano almost fits in there, like, you know. I nearly picked the piano up, but the only problem is I had to have the doors open, like, you know. I picked the wardrobe up and I just folded the door backwards, tied it to the back bumper, and, you know, away to go, like. It's a nice car, you know, I like it. I don't own a modern car at all, you know. I find the old cars much easier to work on. You know, I've had modern cars up to about 15 years ago, but for me they've got nothing, you know, to offer. You know, I've been driving like Sierras and things like that, but it's like being on Valium, you know. You don't know what you're doing. You just sit there like in a daze. You know, you don't feel anything. You don't feel the road. When you put your foot on the brake, you know, it doesn't. There's no connection like with the road anyway. You know, so to me, it's old cars every day. You know.
I got interested in cars, these classic cars. We were on holiday in Cornwall and an Austin A40 Sports passed us on the side of the road. And having one of these cars in the 60s when I was courting brought back a lot of memories. And I looked in all the ads in the papers, free ads, looking for one of these Austin Sports. And by chance, there was one in the free ads. I rang up about it and it was in 10 mil. And we went the following morning at 9 o'clock off and I bought the car by lunchtime. My wife thought I was mad when she saw it all tied together with string. Well, eventually we made arrangements to get it home, and when I got it home I didn't know what we were going to do with it because it was in such a state, and it took us 18 months of a lot of hard work to get the car as it is today. Well, over the years I've become a collector of some form. I had several sports cars and we couldn't drive them all, so we decided to sell one, and I took an Austin Hereford in a swap for a sports car, and then we spent 12 months restoring that Hereford, and we've got it as good as we could as you see it today. The Austin Hereford has got a 2.2 engine which we tow a caravan to when we go to the shows. We have a bit of enjoyment out of the Hereford. If the weather is not very nice, we leave the sports in the barn and take out the Hereford. And since I've caught the bug, as you can see, we've got a barn full of old cars and we are spoiled for choice. The Austin Hereford differs from the A40 Somerset in that the A40 Somerset was a four-seater with a small engine, and the Hereford was a much bigger car, 10 to 12 inches wider, and it was classed as a six-seater for its day in the early 50s. And it was in its day a very nice car to drive. It's still a very nice car to drive today, but it is a very, very heavy car. We didn't have a lot of work to do on the Hereford, other than do the bottoms of the doors were eaten away, and also the wheel arches had to be renewed, and some of the both back wings had to be restored. Other than that, the chassis and the underneath of the car didn't need any welding whatsoever. one of my other cars, which I purchased recently, is an Austin Devon. Now that's virtually the same as the Austin A40 Sports and the Austin Somerset. The only difference being is that it's got a floor change and not a column change like the other cars. There were thousands of these cars on the road. Austins, you could see more Austins than anything on the road. During the 50s, the Austins were a very popular car. You'd see thousands of them on the road. And the Austin logo at the time was, buy Austin, you can depend on it. In the beginning, my attraction to the Austins were the 30s Austins, because they were cheap vehicles. All these new models started coming out in the middle 50s, and the only thing that I could afford was a 1937 Austin, and I stuck with Austins for most of my life. I then purchased an Austin Devon in the late 50s, and then I met my wife with a Austin A40 Sport, and I think that's what caught my eye, and I've always liked Austins ever since.
Come along here. I mean, we have one here which is a 1959.
Is this the oldest one here today, Chris?
This is the oldest car here today. It was obviously made in 1959. It's owned by Donald Reed, and Donald has been interviewed many times with this car, and he's been in a number of papers. These sort of cars now, I mean, Donald's isn't in absolutely wonderful condition, but he's driven it here today, and he's driven sort of 60 or 70 miles today in it.
Yeah.
And it's all there. Now, if Donald's car if it was totally restored, Donald's car would possibly be worth £8,000 or £9,000.
Really?
The Japanese love these sort of cars. If they can get a 1959 car, they would love it.
Yeah.
As you can see, this car, it's in remarkable condition considering its age.
It's looking in remarkable condition anyway.
My name is Bob Hawkins. I bought this car when I was an apprentice working in a garage, and I bought it in 1964. It's a Series 2 Morris Minor. The year of the car is 1954. It was 10 years old when I bought it. I've kept it for quite a few years. I used to use it daily. Then I sold it once, and I bought it back a year later. It is a rare car today because it's a split screen. There's not many of them about. I suppose there is. I suppose there was quite a lot made at the time, but they are getting very scarce. So it's an interest for me and a hobby to look after it. This one particularly don't like the hills very much, but I can put up with it. The only thing is, a lot of the modern cars are waiting behind you, and they want to overtake, but I just got to go along quietly with it, and I put up with it now. But in the beginning it was, it was a bit of a struggle, but it's no problem. I don't intend selling a car. I'll keep it now indefinitely, because I've done quite a lot of work to it. So it's it's not hard work now for me. I can just do a little bit every now and again to it, as long as it passes the MOT every year. I am a mechanic by trade, but over the years I had to change the engine. I think I've done it twice now. I hand painted it at one time. Then I wanted it back to its original colour, Empire Green. Then I had to rub it down to the bare metal, and I had to take all the chrome and windows out of it, then take it and have it resprayed. And now I've got it back to its, more or less, its original condition.
I'm Godfrey Crew. I'm a retired dairyman from the Newport area, and as I say, I've done 50 years in the business. I gave it up because of bad legs. We got into Morris Miners way back in the 60s when we first started with the milk business, and then we sort of carried on messing about with them, buying electricity vans and things like that, and we just carried on, and the workshops got took over by the Morris Miners Spares. I then became chairman of the South Wales branch of Morris Miners for quite a number of years. Then when I went into hospital, I had to give it up for a bit, but I am now back at it again through my sins. The vehicles I am now running at present consist of an ex-saloon made into a convertible back 10 years ago for my daughter's wedding. We run a van that we built very quickly and it's painted up as a bomb disposal, and our long project has been a Morris Minor milk float badge as an Austin, which everybody can understand why they put the badge on it. It was just people wouldn't buy Morrises, they wanted Austins, so they just changed the nameplate on it, and that was it. Now the white car, as I say, was done for my daughter's wedding. Originally a saloon run by one of my staff who was purchased off me. He'd run in the back of my Land Rover, wrote it off, and another car into the bargain. We then turned around and took it back off him because he never paid for it, and it was stored for quite a number of years. It was then repaired and taken to Malvern. They took the roof off it and made it into a convertible because there are kits around for doing the job properly, which they only done the car. We done the rebuilding of the rest of it. We had one of our own customers off the milk road spray it for us, and since then we've done a number of weddings with it for mostly club members. It's as standard as can be, other than that it's got servo brakes, H4 headlamps, electric washers and automatic reversing light. It still carries a 1098 engine which we rebuilt about 7 years ago, and the gearbox is still the original, which is unbelievable. It's now into the 90-odd thousand mile. Rust in it has been very negligible. We've had our little mishaps, especially with other people seem to want to modify it with dents. But beyond that, it as you see it, is what you got, and it's a very good vehicle. It's been to Jersey. It's done weddings all around the country, and I've got no worries about going anywhere with it at all. But it's 10 years now, and it wants to start thinking about some major work doing on it, paint-wise mostly. Half it was done last year because we refitted new doors, a new boot lid, and a new valance. But I've noticed, in fact only today, that the rust is coming through bad on the front wings. So we will probably put fiberglass ones on there. Then they should last, because they were done by Smith & Deakin and they're done to our own thickness. They're not the ordinary standard ones, they are made that much more to last a bit longer. Being what's known as a chop top, and it's now a convertible, roofs are not all the same. It's no good having a standard in through the post hood. You really need to have it made to fit it. Now Don Hoods in Birmingham usually fit my hoods because I find they are the best. We started off with the first hood. It all came apart, the stitching came undone and all. We then had a second one which we bought through the post, as you can see, and it would not fit tidy. It fitted, but not to the standard we would have liked. I complained, they gave me another one, which I still have, but it's never been fitted. Because the year before last, we were at Land's End, and the wind was stronger than the fixing of the hood. And it took it away, and the insurance agreed to pay for a replacement hood, which is the one that's on there now. It can be put up in quite a few seconds. It takes a bit longer taking it down because you have to fold it neatly, and we do have a bag to put it in to make it finish, which is black. But as I say, putting it up when it starts to rain, it's in seconds. There's no problem at all. 4, 6 press studs and 2 wing nuts, and it's up. And to me, it's quite convenient because you've got the windows all around you, so you don't get the wind blowing of the same as if you've got no side screens or anything like that. The original Morris Minors did have a lift-out side screen at the rear, and for some unknown reason it seemed to vacuum the air in behind you, so you had to wear a cap to keep the hair out of your eyes, which is one of the biggest things with all convertibles. If you've got long hair, it's a problem, and that's why you see someone wearing with their hats back to front. Well, my wife drives this car mostly. It's been fitted with an invalid seat for myself, which is on slides, which is equal to the Metro. My wife uses it mostly because it's the only vehicle we got other than commercials. And her sister can get in and out of it because she is crippled up and can't work. The wife would rather have a more modern car because she complains the suspension is a bit hard going over these modern retard ramps. Basically, she's quite happy driving it because it's very cost effective, is the main thing of it. It's just, as I say, an ordinary standard, but it's not as most people buy them as a second car or as a banger to take the kids to school. To me, it's a bit of a luxury car. A long-standing thing I would have always wanted was an open-top vehicle. But my wife got it all the time. But then, my love is commercials. And that's where it lies. And maybe one day she might have a more modern car if she wins the lottery. That's the only time, because as far as I'm concerned, Morris Minors are here to stay with us. Amen. And that's it.